Hi, it's Kamon Reynolds, and I promised we'd talk about painting, and here we are. So we're going to cover things that you need to do, things that I did in the past that were not very awesome, and why you have to watch out about the internet. Also, just different tricks and tips and ideas, and there's several different ways to paint. This paint that we're using right here is an expensive paint. Now, did I pay a lot of money for it? No, sir, because I went to Lowe's and they had some paint that someone had brought back, and instead of paying $250 for this 5-gallon, I paid $45 for this gallon. So that's the way to do it right there. Always keep a lookout for that kind of stuff. Now, there's a big debate out there on oil-based paints or latex-based paints. And some people say the oil-based paints are better. And I tend to kind of lean that way, but the cleanups of paint, and also it all depends on what price I can get. That's the main thing. Now, I'm not even really painting these days. We'll be showing you our setup for that here in probably the next month. We'll be doing a lot of wax dipping. However, price is the main thing to me. And I really think as long as you paint the right way, you get a good undercoat or have a high-quality paint that has a primer type thing built in. Get off of there. Taking its sweet time. Anyway, so we're going to show you what to watch out for. Now, I painted some of this box so I could kind of show you what happens. Now, on this corner right here, this is one of the key spots. The tops and the bottom edges and these corners. That is where your boxes rot first. Every single time, unless you have some really bad equipment. Now, it's already sucking up into this end grain right here. This is one of the most important parts, and you've got to get in there. Plus, this piece of equipment came from the Amish in Lawrenceburg, and while the equipment is good, it's not the most uniform, and the joints aren't as tight as some of the equipment that I've purchased in the past. So in between these fingers, there's going to be gaps, especially in this box. Now, if you get budget grade or something like that, you're going to experience that as well. You need to push down with your roller on those corners and make sure it soaks up in that end grain. Some crazy birds up there. I can't believe how warm it is this time of the year. T-shirt weather. All right, now look at this right here one more time. I just really want to reinforce. That's with a really high quality type of paint, and it just soaks right into the end grain. You've really got to come back and get that. I don't care if it says one coat on the bucket. Focus on these areas. This is going to help your equipment last so much longer. Make sure that your boxes don't have a bunch of dust and stuff on them. Now, if you don't have a paint like this and you're getting, just like a barn and fence paint or something like that, make sure you have a good undercoat. I really think a good primer or just a really high quality paint is worth it. Now, price is there too. But one thing that I learned the hard way is, so when I started off 18 years ago, I painted my boxes almost like this. The only thing I didn't do is focus a lot on these edges right here. And because of that, my equipment probably could have lasted quite a bit longer. Those boxes lasted about a decade without a second coat of paint on them. Had I come back and painted them, and had I painted them right the first time, I bet I'd still be using several of them. Now, what happens, especially here in Tennessee where we get a lot of rain, like 60, 70 inches of rain, we get a lot in the wintertime, we're warm, we are one of the #1 states for flora and fauna, our soil loves to rot things, is that you'll get some rain, and it'll sit between the bottom board and the bottom box, or the next box up, and it doesn't matter. As long as there's a little crack, those tiny raindrops will get in there, and they'll sit on there. And if you don't have it painted, it's going to soak up into your wood, and as it gets colder and warmer, it's going to expand, it's going to swell, it's going to cause issues. And if you paint it, or wax dip it, or you seal it with something, it's going to help tremendously. And a lot of times think, well, paint's a little expensive. Now, if you can find it cheap, that's great, but some people don't want to take the time. I don't like to paint. I don't. But it really makes a big difference. And I really think with a good paint job, you focus on those end grains and those edges, you are going to give yourself a piece of equipment that has the opportunity to last a decade. Especially if you come back in a handful of years and you go back and paint those edges and corners, and maybe just paint the whole box. But this smooth area right here, boxes really don't rot there. If they're going to rot, it's going to be up in here or down in here where it's soaked in through the edges right here or through those corners every stinking time. Now, I'm going to be using, let me get to a bare spot. Now, so let me tell you another story though. So I painted them somewhat right the first time, and they lasted really good. A few years later, it's probably about 2 or 3 years after I got into beekeeping, I came into a beekeeping guru's website. I'm not going to name names, but it said to go ahead and just don't paint it because, you know, it's more, you know, it's better for the colony, it's more natural for the bees when they're flying in to look at it, and, you know, the cost of paint, the time to paint it, if you just let it go as it is, it's almost just as good as painting it, and it'll be, you know, the cost will be about the same. I say fiddlesticks to that. That was bad information, and those boxes lasted only about 3, maybe 5 years on the better ones, and the last couple years of service, they were so swollen and just such a shoddy bunch of work at that point. It just ruined the boxes, and I really recommend you don't do that. Now, there's a couple different ways of preserving your boxes that doesn't involve paint, but I really think that you need to do something to encourage longer life on your equipment. If you haven't noticed, beekeeping can be a little pricey. Now, we'll be trying to provide some information to help you save money, but the best thing you can do is take the equipment that you have invested in and make it last. All right, off my little soapbox. All right, so we got our bare side over here. Again, this smooth side, that's not where it's going to rot much. Now, you're probably wondering, should I paint the inside of my box? And if you ask that on Facebook, my goodness, you're going to be bombarded with a heck of a lot of no's. But I know beekeepers who do that, and if you read a lot of books in beekeeping history, there were several old beekeepers that did that, and they weren't using some of the paints that we're using now that, in my opinion, are better for, well, just pretty much everything and anyone as far as safety goes, and the bees were fine. Anyone that's done a lot of cutouts, they can show you pictures of bees being in, up against pressure treated. They'll be up against asbestos kind of material. They'll be up against lead paint, all kinds of stuff. I'm really not concerned about that as far as the bees' health. I'm concerned about it getting in to my honey and whatnot. So you might want to watch out on that kind of thing. I don't think there's any reason to paint the inside, but if you want to, it's not going to hurt your bees. It's not. Now, if I was going to paint the inside a little bit, I would be painting around the inside of the edges where water could get down and kind of swell in a little bit, but again, I don't fool with that. I just don't think it's fully necessary. The main thing is just to focus on these edges and everything. You can see where I've got little chunks of debris that came off the lid under this paint. But so we've already focused on the edges a little bit. I'm going to be pushing into this a little bit more. Now you can make yourself a better system than what I have right here to paint your equipment. Just make sure you paint this up here, you come back again and just push it into that end grain. I mean, just get it all in there and do it again and do it again. Your equipment will last so much longer and your bees will thank you, and so will your pocketbook. Come back in a handful of years and do it again. Yeah, that's going to be really good right there. All it takes is a little bit of moisture to get inside that equipment, and it is going to start swelling and start the decomposition process. Now, if you're in a dry area where you only get about 8 to 10 inches of rain a year or less, you know, this might not apply to you as much. But here in Tennessee, let me tell you, it makes a big difference. Now, we will be doing more videos in regards to sealing and stuff like that. Now, by the way, I almost forgot. I have used a paint sprayer in the past, and those work really fast and awesome. You can even rent them for a pretty cheap price. However, you're still going to want to roll these edges. You're going to want to roll these corners, push that in there, and then you can do like one coat of that, then come back and do it again, and then spray the rest of the box. And that does work really well because, again, this right here is pretty easy to keep from rotting. It's always those corners. I think I've covered about everything except that I wanted to mention that we have the playlist again up in the, I think it's this side. Yeah, well, I was like, yeah. This side over here, we're going to be keeping on top of the playlist this year, so if you have questions, feel free to leave them. But always check the playlist because we might already have a video on it, and that way it'll get to you. I've had a couple of people say that I don't answer questions, and that's a little unfair, I think, because I answer hundreds a week. I can't get to everybody's. I actually answered one that was from June just yesterday, and I didn't know the guy had left it. I can't get to them all. There's just too many. Hopefully over time we'll have enough videos that our playlists will be able to, you can go in there and it'll answer the questions for you. Don't be discouraged and stop leaving those questions, but just realize that we don't see everything, and sometimes we just don't have the time. I mean, to be honest, to answer it immediately, and we try to get back to it, and we just don't. We got a lot going on, but we will do our best. If you have any comments or questions on painting these boxes, definitely leave them below. Use this little paintbrush to get in there. I am not a painting type person, so we're going to be showing you our wax dipping setup before too long. Thanks for watching our videos.